Good evening, good evening, good evening. Yes, if you're watching pre-show, you'll know I have got a guest in tonight from the States. I shall introduce him properly in a second, but we need to have the titles first. We'll have those in just a sec, but it is Tuesday, the 20th of January 2015, and you, my friends, are watching VaperScene.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
Yes, indeed, those were the titles, and you are watching VaperScene on the 20th of January. I have with me today this man here, Mr. Dimitris Agafiotis, aka the Vaping Greek, all the way from Tennessee/Georgia. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I just want to hold up my sign one more time because I want to give, I just want to give all my love to Mr. I am David Dorn's #1 fan. I just want to make sure everybody there across the pond understands that. And it's funny because a lot of people will message me on YouTube and they said, "Are you really Greek?" I said, "Well, I mean, obviously I have an IGN that says Vaping Greek. So yeah, obviously I am from Greece. I was born and raised in Athens, Greece, but I've been here in the United States for a little over 22 years now." So
22 years.
yes, yes.
And do you prefer the States to Greece?
That's a tough question. I think I'm more American than a lot of the Americans here, simply because I came to this country for a better living, and it's definitely fulfilled that. It's given me everything that I couldn't have back home, and growing up as an orphan without a father, it was just difficult financial time for us. So the United States gave me an opportunity to do something, not only for myself but for my family as well too. So on that aspect, I absolutely love this country. And of course I miss Greece, but I go every year now. I go every year down with my family and spend a few weeks. And as much as hardship as that country has taken over the last 4 or 5 years, and some more in the future, the way that it's going, I always want to go back because it's still home to me.
Yes, always good to go back to your roots, I guess.
Sure.
And have you got family still over there?
All I have is a sister now, as far as immediate family. I lost my mother in 1999, but I do have a sister there in Athens that I see every year. And generally, I have a lot of friends that I grew up with. I'm very, very close to some friends that I consider family as well. So even though they're not immediate family, I consider them my family. So I really enjoy spending time with them. And as we've grown, we're all married now. We all have kids. Coming from the 15-year-old, rebels that we were, now to 40-year-old men with families, we still vibe the same as we did 25 years ago. So it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I must say, I've never been there. I've never been to Greece. I've been to other parts of Europe, but never managed to get there.
I've been really trying to get the Greeks organized, the vaping community, to have a big meet there. I mean, what just imagine it, during the summertime in one of the islands, having vapors from across the world gather. But, just like any other community, it's just really hard trying to get people organized and on board. And but hopefully my dream will come true one day. I'll be able to have a vape meet in Santorini. Can you imagine it? I mean, that'd be, have 10,000 vapors, embark on this island, and we all go skinny dipping and then vape on the beach. It'd be fantastic. It could definitely make the news, I think. I mean, it'd be like, like the Million Man March, but on a Greek island with vapors.
Yes, Grease Fest with skinny dipping.
Yeah, maybe that was a little bit of far fetched.
Well, if you can rope Phil into it, then maybe that'll happen, eh?
Oh, he doesn't need an excuse to show off his body. He'll jump right in.
Well, talking about your bromance with Mr. Posado,
Yeah.
why don't you fill us in on the trip that you took just recently? We were all following it on Facebook. Well, I was certainly following Phil's posts on Facebook, and you had your show last week, which, if you haven't seen it, guys, it's Smoke Free Radio. It's on a Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time, that's Eastern American time, but you can also get it on SoundCloud after the event, which is what I did because I was in Scotland last week. So I listened to it when I got home, and it was quite in depth about the whole trip, but also there was lots of things talked about, including pig reviews. But you can tell us some more about that.
Yeah, and just to back up a little bit here with Phil, the trip actually started becoming a conversation over the summer at an event called the Vape Summit in Las Vegas that me and Phil attended to. We actually spoke there, part of our presentations, and we went out to dinner with Inikin and Brandon from Evolve, which actually has a business relationship with Inikin. They sell the Evolve chips now for the SVD and some future projects that they're working on. And, I mean, we've been reviewing products for almost 4 years now. So we've had a pretty good relationship with a lot of these Chinese manufacturers. A lot of people might not know, especially new vapors, that, 3-4 years ago, the production of new products out of China was very much slower than it is now. I mean, we actually used to get products in and try them out, and then send, a new revision and a new revision, instead of what they're doing now, just kind of releasing everything out there to the market for people to buy. But so since we've had this business relationship, just 4 years, taking a look at the products, we did get into tour China, the Shenzhen area, and of course their factory, and kind of document and bring back to the people, to the vapors, what exactly happens in a Chinese manufacturing facility. That was the initial idea. Once we started to make this a reality, because logistically it's very difficult. I mean, between our jobs and our families, to be able to take away the time, you really needed a week and a half to spend there in order to get the grasp of it. So once we logistically worked out the times that we could go, we made an announcement. And once we made the announcement, then all these requests started coming in by other factories to come and tour their facility. In fact, I can tell you over 20 requests from different manufacturers to just come and visit them. And it was just not possible to do. So what we did is we agreed to visit 3 facilities, which was Kanger, Inikin, and Aspire, which was E-Gate Aspire. And since all 3 of those are part of Sevia, which is the new Shenzhen Electronic Vapor Industry Association in China, they split the cost for the expenses for me and Phil to travel there. In general, what we did is we went to every factory and we shot footage of the production in the facility. That way, the people across the world that are vapors know exactly how these products are being made, because there's a lot of misconception on Chinese manufacturing, and a lot of misconception from the media as well too. And I think that was crucial for us to be able to document and then bring back. It was a really, really exciting trip and an eye-opener in many ways. And we're certainly appreciative of giving the opportunity to do that.
I'm just looking at my notes I made while I was listening to the show. You went to Inikin, you went to Kanga, you went to E-Gate, you also went to a CNC clone facility as well. And I know you've got feelings about the whole clone situation over there, which it was really interesting to listen to, actually, because you were talking to the guys making the clones, and as far as they're concerned, they're doing a job. They're doing a job to the best of their ability. But it was interesting to hear how they got the ideas for the clones. They actually sent something from the States. Is that right?
The clone visit, I have to thank Brian Skinner. He's the one that arranged that. He owns Vapage and SIG20 here in the United States, and he also works very closely with eGate. He actually took us to a couple of smaller factories that manufacture electronic cigarettes and parts to kind of give us an idea of how the small guys operate. It's not all Inniken and Kanger and Aspire, with 1,000 and 1,500 employees. And part of his trip was to take us to a CNC shop. Now, keep in mind that this is just the manufacturer of the part. It's not, they don't sell their products to retail customers. They don't sell their products online or anything like that. They don't just make e-cig parts, even though now it's a big part of their business. They pretty much make anything that you send them. They have CNC machines, and they'll cut and polish and clean any kind of stainless steel or brass or copper piece. So I was a little bit hesitant when we drove in there because here we are, two big guys walking in with cameras at a clone shop, if you want to call it that. I can't even call it a clone shop. I really can't. But they welcomed us with open arms. The factory owner was very accommodating and showing us around. They answered every question that we had. They gave us drinks. They were very welcoming on cam. And one of the things that Phil noticed was talking to the owner, he seemed like he was really proud of his work, even though I felt really uncomfortable. The moment that we walked into the CNC shop, they were making the K-Fun 4. They were cutting pieces for the K-Fun 4. Mm-hmm. And it felt almost surreal, to be honest with you. I got this chill, going through my body. I'm like, this is where it happens. And but to them, it was just an order. Somebody's placing an order to them. There was about a dozen employees at this little factory. 3 or 4 guys that were polishing, 3 or 4 guys that were cleaning, 3 or 4 guys that were cutting in the machines, and a couple of girls in the warehouse. We got this feeling that, they're not vapors. They're not like us. They're not passionate. They're not in the community. They don't know what's popular. They don't know what's hot. They don't know what piece they need to cut. So we got the guy on cam, and I can't wait for Phil to put this video out. The owner, I turned and I asked him blunt. I was like, how do you know what piece that you're going to cut here and what you're going to manufacture? And he said, looked straight into the cam, and I have no reason not to believe him, that he says that, American vendors will send us the pieces here, and we reverse engineer them. They tell us this is what we want, this is how many pieces we want, and then we cut them and we make them. So it kind of gives you a different perspective, because I see a lot of times on social media, on Facebook, people saying, oh, the Chinese cloners. Are the Chinese really the cloners, though? Or is it the demand? Is it us vapors that are creating this demand? Is it the vendors that are pushing these products? They can't get the authentics, and then they there's such a huge demand that they send the products to China to get cloned. Look, I'm not saying that they're not to blame, but I think if there's a command of blame, I think that they should be at the bottom, really.
Yeah, they're basically doing a job that they've been asked to do. They've been paid to do. So
definitely glamorous, Marco, by the way. Nothing glamorous. It was just a rundown factory, just nothing glamorous about that job. So it's just another day at work and making a living.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the video when it's put together. Not just that section, but the bits around the other factories. Because I was listening, and when you went to Kango, for instance, they're kicking out 110,000 sub-tanks a day. Is that right?
110,000 sub-tank coils a day.
Coils a day.
Yeah. What was really interesting about the big manufacturers, and I call them the big 3, because I think everybody agrees that those 3, Joytech and Smoke, they're also pretty large. But I think that these 3 have really taken off this year as being the 3 manufacturers that a lot of, you walk into any vape store, you're going to see products from all 3. What was really surprising to me during the trip was that none of them really manufacture anything. They're all huge assembly plants. Now, all of them have an engineering department, which we saw firsthand. We walked in and there were guys there on computers doing CAD drawings. I think Kanger had 4 or 5 guys on staff. Aspire had 7 or 8 guys. When they come up with a product that they're going to release on the market, they cut every piece individually and then they outsource it. So they give it to these smaller factories, and they don't give it all to one factory, so they don't get cloned themselves. So they'll give like the base to one factory, and then they'll give the tank to another factory, and then the coil to another factory. So all these raw components come into Kanger, and it passes a quality control. They look at the raw components if it matches all the drawings that the engineers did, and basically all they do is assemble it. So all the products go up to the assembly lines, and they start piecing everything together to make the device or the atomizers that they're putting out there. Nothing really is being manufactured between Kanger, Innokin, and Aspire, but more of assembling in those factories.
Right, so the basically that they outsource the different components to different companies, then they bring them all in and they assemble them on site in the factories that they have. And Phil was saying that Innokin was a lot bigger than he expected. And also you looked at did you go into any of the dorms, or did you just see the dorms that were next door?
We only saw the dorms on the outside. We didn't go inside. No, I'm assuming it's not going to be anything glamorous like a 5-star hotel. You could tell. But even the factory owners told us, it's a bed, a small kitchenette, and that's it. I mean, that's all they get. And to us, being, from a more civilized, if you want to call that world, to us it seems like, oh, that's just, it's so bad. But you got to keep in mind where these workers are coming from, okay? So these workers are coming from huts and dirt floor homes that are built with straw. So for them to come into town to work and even stay at a dorm, it's a huge thing. So there's such a cultural difference in China from, the poor, if you want to call it, the lower class, all the way to the upper class, that to them, it's a step up where they came from. So we can't really compare it based on what we know as, good living conditions or, high paid salary jobs. The average worker there, the operator, as they call them, the people that are on the line, the average operator makes about $300 a month. And then, some of the, quality control supervisors, they make about $500 a month. So it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but, like anything, it's all relative to what everybody there makes on an average monthly salary. And they definitely don't have any shortage of finding workers. There's people lined up for work every day.
Yeah, there was something over here on the BBC. I think it was December, might have been the end of November, about some of the manufacturers in China, the ones that were making Apple products, and there were some concerns over overworking and people falling asleep and things. Did you see any kind of overworking, or was it all as you would expect?
I did not see. I expected worse than what I saw. Visited 4 factories total. So if all 4 of them manufactured these results for us to see, I find it pretty hard to believe. There was some show there, I understand, because we were coming, but it's very hard to have 1,500 employees act differently while us being there. So at Kanger, there were 1,500 employees. At E-Gate, there were 1,200, and at Innokin, there were 1,000. In the smaller factory, there were 20 employees. We didn't see any of that. They go to work 8 o'clock in the morning, they leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They work 5.5 days, Monday through Friday, and half a day Saturday. They take a lunch break and 30-minute nap time every day. So if that's bad conditions, I wish I had nap time at my job. I'll tell you that right now. If that's bad conditions, we didn't see any of that. We didn't see. Now, what we did see, though, was discipline. All the operators, everybody was so disciplined. We didn't hear any talking inside the factories. We didn't see, any phones or Facebook or people, listening to music. Everybody was concentrated and doing their job that they were being paid for. So if that discipline is considered, maybe something unique to us Westerners, maybe you can say that. But we definitely didn't see any horrible conditions as far as the employment.
That's it's good to know. Good to know. And I know that you saw different workers wearing different outfits depending on what roles they were doing. What we'll do is we'll just go into the first set of ads and we'll get some more when we come back. We'll see you in 2.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
Often imitated, never duplicated. Award-winning service and products from cloud9vaping.co.uk.
And now it's back to VaperScene on Vapor Trails TV. VaperScene is sponsored by Healthy Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
And welcome back. I was pressing the button there and nothing was happening. Live, this is live, this is what happens. So I'm here, as you know, talking with Dimitris. And just before the break there, we were talking about the factories and the living conditions. You said in your show on Wednesday that there were different workers, so they had, were there pink things they were wearing, which were quality control?
They had, yeah, which was pretty ironic, by the way. It's depending on the position that they had down the line, they had different colors to signify exactly what their job was. Most of the quality control had either pink bands on or actually pink coats on. Most of the operators had white or blue, which was the case at Kangertech. And every quality control had a job of controlling one part of the assembly line. So generally after 3 or 4 workers, there was one quality control and then one supervisor that kind of oversaw the entire assembly line. Every assembly line about 20 workers, depending on what they were doing. We actually shot a really nice video of the assembly line of the 20-watt MVP. We spent a lot of time there because that was the newest product that they were making. And we put the camera down the belt. So from the beginning of the MVP, assembling it all the way to the end, made for some really, really good footage. But you know, when you're producing, you know, we always hear, you know, oh, I got a bad coil. How many times have you heard that, right? I opened up this pack and, you know, 2 out of 5 were duds. There's 2 ways to explain that. Number one, obviously, when you're making 100,000 coils a day, chances are there's going to be some duds. I mean, can you imagine that they're making 100,000 coils a day and you got that dud one? You know, how unlucky can you be? And then the second of all, there's a lot of clones. Just 2 blocks down from the Kanger factory, they shut down. The attorneys for Kanger shut down a factory. It was actually a husband and wife with 3 employees that were making clone sub-tanks, just 2 blocks down from the original Kanger factory. So we're talking about clones that are, you know, we criticize sometimes clones, but they have to deal with their own, you know, they'll go to the same suppliers that Kanger's getting the parts from, and they'll start, you know, making clones of the sub-tanks themselves. So there's a lot of bad product on the market, a lot of clone product on the market, which, by the way, is a lot of the manufacturer's fault because of the way that they distribute their product. And it's something that we talked about during the conference as well, too. There's a huge problem with the way that the product is being distributed out of China to the various countries.
Yes, that's what I'm interested, isn't it? 2 blocks away and there's somebody making clones of the sub-tank.
But there's a lot there, so it's very difficult for them to do anything, right? I mean, there's really no copyright laws in China. So, I mean, they really, you know, that husband and wife that were cloning, they probably went down the street and rented another space, you know, just 1 floor. It's about $700 a month in a factory to rent 1 floor. So they probably rented another space and they started making them again. It's very, very difficult to control.
It's like the counterfeiters making counterfeit notes.
Yes.
You cut off one arm and another one grows.
Right.
Bit like Hydra. You touched there on the conference, which was another part of the trip, and there were most of the manufacturers and juice manufacturers there, but Joytech weren't.
Yes, Joytech was not there. I was really surprised about that. I think because when the Sevilla was formed, I think that Joy Tech didn't want to join this organization. I think they kind of feel like it's very tricky. I really don't want to put myself in a bad situation here, but maybe they feel like Kanger and Anakin and Aspire are kind to trying to monopolize the market, kind of show that, you know, maybe they didn't want to get into that same crowd. So they didn't join Sevilla, which was a little bit surprising to me. And not for them not to be represented at the conference again was surprising, because there was a lot of good information that was given there, a lot for their product as well too, because we have to keep in mind that a lot of the products that we criticize here for closed vapor product, cig-likes or looky-likies, as David Doran calls them, you know, a lot of those people were there and they didn't really like what I had to say, because obviously my presentation had to deal a lot with the open vapor product. But aside from that, I think over 70 manufacturers, which was a huge amount of pressure on me, Mark. I'm not going to lie to you. Initially, the talk was for me to go talk to Sevilla. And I thought it was going to be, you know, the 6-7 companies that compose of Sevilla, their owners, in a closed room somewhere. You know, I thought that is initially what we're going to do. So when we get to China, George, which is the VP of Anakin, says, "Oh, you know, there's going to be a few more manufacturers there." And I was like, "Well, how many manufacturers are going to be?" "Oh," he says, "I don't know, about 70 or 80. I was like, "Are you kidding me? What the hell?" So all this thing turned into like a hotel banquet hall with screens and presentations. I had a slide presentation prepared that we had to translate into Chinese as well too. So next thing I know, you know, so I said, okay, well, we'll talk to the manufacturers. Then George calls up. He says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, there'll be 3 TV stations there, 2 newspapers, and 1 radio station." I was like, "Thanks, George. Can you put any more pressure on me?" I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it turned out to be a huge turnout, which I had not anticipated. I'll be honest with you. A lot of my presentation was geared towards the open vapor product, and I hate it because a lot of people did not even know what my goal here was in China. Right? I'm vapor product. I won't lie to you. My only goal was to go there and tell them, listen, open vapor is the future. Most of you guys here make open vapor products. You need to help the open vapor market succeed in the EU and the USA. And all my slides included the EU, by the way. I want people to understand that. I have some slides up on my website on demosphere.com, which it won't let me put obviously in the chat. But if you go to demosphere.com and it's the second post there, you'll see some of the slides that I talk not only about the challenges in the US with the FDA, but also talked about the challenges in the EU and the WHO. So in short, Phil made a presentation at the beginning talking about distribution of the product and slowing down the product coming out of China, because it's just a barrage. You know, the iStick is very popular. Next thing you know, other boxes coming out, there's 20 watts. You know, the Lannis is popular. Next thing you know, there's 100 new tanks coming out in the market. We have to be able to slow down the distribution of the product and also make sure they distribute it through proper channels, right? Because anybody right now can pick up the phone and call Anakin and place an order for 50 tanks. That has to stop. That's how the product is not controlled into the market, and that's why you see a lot of clones that exist on the market as well. But anyway, after Phil got done with his presentation and, you know, talked a little bit about his history with vaping and where he is now in reviewing product, my turn came, and I was extremely nervous because I knew inside that group of manufacturers there were a lot of cig-like manufacturers as well too. Mm-hmm. So I bashed them a little bit. I showed pictures of the cartomizer that we used in 2009 by the FDA. You know, that cartomizer picture where it's open and it's black, and it shows, you know, that it had toxin in it and metals and all that. We all know that's bullshit, but excuse me, I don't know if I can say that.
You can say that.
We know it's BS, but I showed him that cartomizer and I said, this is what our governments in the EU and in USA are basing their decisions on this product. So overall, you know, the goal was, listen, as Chinese manufacturers, you have to back up your product. You have to spend money to do studies on your product. You have to present those studies out to the general public, and something that we can use to take to the regulators and say, hey, listen, not all Chinese manufacturing is what you appear it to be. In fact, I showed him, I have it on Demosphere as well too, I showed him pictures of how the news media in the EU and the US think, you know, what Chinese manufacturers are. You know, one of the slides said that China's unregulated e-cigs end up in the U.S., right? This is a really nice, catchy title. Mm-hmm. So basically what they're saying is that all e-cigs out of China are unregulated, don't have quality control, and we're all vaping toxins and chemicals and heavy metals, which is not true. But in order for them to prove that it's not true, they have to spend the money to do the proper research to back up their products. So I kind of was trying to blackmail them and scare them a little bit, which I think I did. I think after a 1 hour presentation, I think that I could see in their faces like, oh shit, something's happening here. We really got to pay attention. I showed them, slides from the RGR comments to the FDA. I showed them slides from Logic, bashing the open vapor product. And at the end of the day, what I did is I raised the bottle of juice and I raised, an MVP with a Nautilus tank, and I said, the products that you make here, and I raised up the MVP, all depend on the juice. If we don't have juice in the US and the EU, your products are useless. You might as well all shut down and start making or vacuum cleaners or whatever, because you're not going to have a place in the market if everything goes to a closed vapor product. The great thing that I can announce is that I think I'm quite possibly the first person to go into China and get money from these Chinese manufacturers to fund a Dr. Frasalino study. So for that, I'm extremely proud. I'm not close to announce exactly what it's going to be. We're very, very close to do that. But there will be a study done here within the next couple of weeks. It's going to be launched that the Chinese manufacturers themselves will fund, that are going to show the second and third generation products are better than the cartomizers and the stuff that's been on the market since 2007. So for that, I'm very, very proud. And I'm also proud that the Chinese manufacturers were able to listen and they're willing to do this. They have a lot of money, Marco. Mm-hmm. They have tons of money. They just don't know how to spend it. And I think that I at least guided them when it comes to studies that we all can use in the EU and the FDA and the US as well, too. I think I guided them that this is a good way of approaching the market.
Yeah, they do have an immense amount of cash, because obviously they're making a lot from the kit. Something that was also touched on by Phil when he spoke to them over there was, why are you doing a V1 and then 2 weeks later V2 and then a week later a V3 instead of getting the V1 right first time?
You know what most of the people answered when we asked them that?
Mm-hmm.
They say that there's such a huge demand and such a pressure by the market to put out the product that sometimes, they just let it go. People will buy it. If there's anybody to fault at that, Marco, it's us. It's us, the vapors. Because we're always chasing the dragon. We're always trying to find the better and the best and the newest thing that's out there. And we're willing to buy something, even if it has flaws, even though we know there's going to be a version 2. We have created that demand. And unless we're able to throttle that, and unless we're able to get the vendors to stop buying it and pushing it as well, that's not going to stop. It's just not going to stop. There's a huge, huge competition in China right now through the manufacturers to put out the newest, and that's the results that you see. Version 1, 2, 3, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah, I guess the way that they may well look at it is, if we don't get this product out now, then our competitor will get it out before us, in which case we're losing out. I mean, the big example here is phones. The new iPhone comes out and thousands of people flock to buy the latest handset. They'll camp out overnight, and invariably there are flaws until the next firmware update comes out. Why don't they just get it right before they release it? Because they know how much money they're going to make.
They hit us up 3 or 4 times for the same product. The sub tank is the perfect example. Do you know how hard me and Phil fought with Kanger to put out a 22 millimeter sub tank before they put out the 25? And they just didn't listen. The idea was to have an RBA and a sub-ohm tank in one. Mm-hmm. That way you can use stock coils and you can use RBAs. So when from Kanger Tech, which is the owner, he's an engineer, keep in mind, by the way. Couldn't. He's not a marketing guy. He's not a business guy. All he does all night is sit in an office and try to come up with tanks. That's all he does, right? But he couldn't put the RBA and the coil millimeter body. He just couldn't do it. He said, this is what I have. And we said, well, go back and work at it. But what happened is the Atlantis came out. So as soon as the Atlantis came out, they just released a 25 millimeter sub tank. They didn't care because they had to get on the market and compete. And look what happened now. 3 months later, we have a 22 millimeter sub tank, which actually works fantastic. And they could have done that from day one. Everybody went out there and bought a 25 millimeter tank. Now we'll go out and buy a 22. because the tank works, right? So it's really our fault. You know, if nobody would buy it, they would not make it. Trust me.
Now, the sub tank is an interesting subject, I must say. I've actually got a piece of VT that I shot at the weekend because I have two sub tanks, and I'm using one with the stock 0.5 ohm coil in it, and I was using the other one with the RBA, which I coiled up for temperature control. And there is an issue with the insulator on the RBA deck, which melts if you use strong juices. I've been in contact with Kanga this week and they've come back to me. They are in fact going to release a little insulator that you can swap out, which is going to be via the vendors soon. But that's just a prime example of not testing and not making sure that everything is spot on just to get something out.
You're absolutely right. By the way, they're offering that insulator free of charge to everybody that bought the 25 millimeter sub tank. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. But where is the outrage? Let's say that Apple did that, because you brought the Apple example earlier. You know, where's the outrage? Where's the people, the vendors saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to stop buying your product, testing them out"? But that doesn't happen. You know why, Marco? Because the vendors are just as much competition as these factories are. The vendors that are selling these products always want to have the best and the newest thing that's out there on the market. If all the vendors got together and said, "Hey, listen, we're not buying this product," that wouldn't happen. But nobody does that. In fact, everybody's trying to get them to put out the new product and to get it first into their stores to sell. So again, the chain of command there of blame, you know, goes more deep than what we want to put the blame on China, but do we really put all the fault there to them?
Totally agree. I mean, it really does start with us. It starts with us as a consumer. We want something. We want a device. We want a phone. The vendors say to the manufacturers, "Okay, we want this." So the manufacturers will make thousands and thousands and thousands, but then something might come up and it then cost them more, effectively, because then they've got to send out another part, which costs them money. It's a bit of a shame, and the sub tank itself is a great piece of kit. I'm loving it. I've got mine here, one of them here. The other one is not in use at the moment because the RBA deck is a bit canoodled, but I do have the other RBA deck for the other one with the stock coils on, which I'm going to be using. I'm going to coil that one up. I just won't use the juice that I was using before.
I got the insulator, by the way. I got the corrected insulator RBA deck just the other day in the mail from China, and I built it, and I put it in my 22 millimeter tank, and it performs fantastic. That's all I gotta say. I mean, for a Chinese tank for $45, with the options that this tank has, I'm not gonna say K-Fun quality, but it's pretty damn close. I mean, it's pretty damn close.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great piece of kit, and Matt, who does Wednesday nights, I think he's got 3. He may even have 4. I don't know. And I probably will buy the 22mm one as well, because it will fit a little bit better on the VaperShark, which I've just noticed I've taken a chunk out of the top when I dropped it last week. But there you go.
The new one with the big screen?
Say again.
Is that the new VaperShark that you have with the big screen?
I was impatient and I got the V1. But I've got another one coming next week, which is actually 3D printed. It's a box mod and it's been 3D printed in Ireland. So I'm looking forward to having a look at that. It looks really, really nice, I have to say. And that is with the original small screen. I mean, there's no difference between the chip. It's just that the screen's slightly larger, isn't it, on the V2?
Yeah, especially for older guys like you. I mean, the larger screen it's fantastic. Look, you can see it from over here. I'm really enjoying this large screen on the new RDNA. I think, you know, it just makes it look better, in my opinion, versus the old screen. Plus, the old screen now has been cloned so much from China that, you know, hey, here's something new. Go at it. In 24 hours, I'll have it done in China. That's one thing that I have to make. It makes everybody. You want something done in 24 hours, you can get it done.
Yeah. I think Dave's seen one of the cloned DNA 40 boards, and I'm sure he's going to be bringing that on one of his shows soon, or maybe not. I'm sure he'll tell us in chat. Well, listen, we'll go to the next set of ads, and when we come back, there is more. We'll see you in 2.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
Vapers, do you love discovering new e-liquids? Tell Dripper the types of flavours you like and they'll send you 5 gourmet juices each month. Experience new and exclusive flavours, all with a money-back guarantee and free delivery anywhere in Europe. Dripper.co.uk.
RY4 Radio.
What's in this e-cig cloud? Harmless water vapour, right? Pretty much, yes. Compared to a lit cigarette, much safer than smoke. But it contains nicotine, and nicotine on its own isn't toxic and doesn't cause cancer. If you're worried about switching to vapour, here are some facts. No tar, no smoke, no burnt tobacco. Cooking your evening meal produces more toxins than are found in exhaled vapour. Tobacco smoke contains toxins at very high levels, and vapour does not. And that vapour contains 6,000 times less carcinogens than cigarette smoke. Electronic cigarette vapour. There's nothing to be frightened of. The only dangerous electronic cigarette is a banned one.
And now it's back to VaperScene on Vapor Trails TV. VaperScene is sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
And we are now back in the room. Now, I was looking at chat during the ads and just talking there to Demetrius. And I saw that you were saying I was a bit muffled, a bit low. Is my sound any better now? Because I've tweaked it. Let me know, chat. You may now hear my PC fans as well, which is why I kind of tweaked it a little bit anyway. But we shall crack on, and I shall keep an eye on chat. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Why didn't you tell me 45 minutes ago? Anyway. Let's chat some more to Demetrius, and we're just looking then at the RDNA 40. Give me your thoughts on the whole DNA 40, because really we're looking at a Gen 4 now with the DNA 40 chip.
Yeah. I think as far as the technology, I think it's still in a very early stage. I think a lot of people are trying to grasp it and understand it. My first experience with the DNA 40 was not a pleasant one, and I think a lot of people ran into that same situation because there's so many factors to take in consideration. Building, number one. I mean, I'm not the greatest builder in the world. I will tell you that. I will admit that, I'm very sloppy when it comes to building. You really have to be very detailed and proficient in your building when you're working with nickel. And then second of all, there was admittedly a problem with the first and the second batch of the DNA 40s. I think it was a little bit underplayed on how many out there had issues. But I think overall that Evolve as a company did a pretty good job at handling it. Was it a bit covered up? I don't know if that's the correct word. I did see accusations of people saying that, they're covering up the DNA 40. I think it was handled pretty good. Where will this technology take us? Now, frankly, for people like me that have been vaping for a long time, I think that the temperature control, the temperature control technology is something that we definitely can explore in helping new vapors come into vaping. To me, I think it's going to be brilliant if we're able to get a temperature control device out there in an ego form factor that we can give to a smoker. And imagine that you're never going to experience a dry hit. I mean, can you? Brilliant that will be to get more people transitioning and converted over to vaping. So I see that it has a great future out there. One of the things that the temperature control obviously is meant to do is to avoid the dry puff phenomenon, something that a lot of Dr. Fasarinos has talked about. But I think experienced vapors, we're able to deal that with temperature control or not. We've been vaping long enough to know that if we're going to get a dry hit, we have to do something about our coil. So that technology kind of prevents that. But will it improve or change the way that I vape? No, because I'm proficient enough to know the way that I build and to avoid that dry puff phenomenon. So I'm looking forward to how it's going to develop in the future and what other possibilities it's going to have. Speaking with Brandon, I do know that he has some stuff in the pipeline. He was in China with us, along with Trent, the maker of Hannah Mods, and a lot of people thought that we all went together, which was not true. We didn't have this silly plan of taking over the Chinese manufacturing world. We barely China, but they were there on business, shopping for batteries and for screens and for other stuff that they use in their technology as well. But I did get to speak to Brandon, especially on the flight over. There was a 16-hour flight, so we definitely had a lot of time to talk about how this technology will be used. One of the things that a lot of people haven't taken into consideration is regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, this chip can potentially help us get through some of the regulation hurdles. There's going to be a study. I don't know if Dr. F talked about it yesterday, but I don't know how much I can say about it. But Wednesday, tomorrow, there will be a study released in the New England Journal of Medicine that shows that formaldehydes were produced by high voltage vaping. Obviously, these people that did this study are in a lab. They're not vapors. They were probably hitting this coil dry, and they were, extracting the vapor, which was not really vapor, was burnt wick, and it's showing a high level of formaldehydes. Well, guess what? With the DNA 40 technology, we're never going to have that problem. So think about it from a regulatory standpoint in the next 2 or 3 years, especially here in the USA with the FDA regulations. If they keep bringing up this, hey, listen, your e-cigs are putting out bad stuff. Well, no, we have the technology to avoid that. And I think that, if anything, that's where it's going to be utilized in.
Yeah, I think you're right there. The whole temperature control thing is, it's breaking new molds, really. Dr. F was talking yesterday about nickel and also about titanium, and titanium at voltage can create the titanium dioxides, and nickel is still a factor that they're looking at, but it's the high temperatures that cause the problems.
Absolutely. But how many of us vape at those higher temperatures as well too? So I know that there's a portion of the community that does push the levels to the extreme. I vape at 12 watts. I'm living dangerously at 12 watts. So I can see that. Just, you don't have to be a scientist to know. Common sense will tell you, you're going to increase the heat, you're going to increase the temperature. Chances are that the vapor that you're producing might be more toxic, if you want to call it that, than versus in a lower temperature. But yet again, we don't have any studies. So that's one of the things, again, that I'm kind of proud of, is that I was able to help Dr. F raise the funds to do this temperature study. I think once the temperature study is out and we know what's happening, then the DNA 40 technology will be a little bit more easy to absorb for your average vapor.
Yes, yeah, and when that technology comes into a smaller form factor, as the chips get smaller, and you can get it in like an Ego style battery, that will be a severe game changer.
Keep in mind, Marco, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but this thought just came to my mind. Keep in mind that this community of vapors, they're very, very passionate about what they do. So, if somebody's used to vaping, a 0.2 ohm coil at 80 watts, and all of a sudden you tell them there might be something wrong with it, they take it personally. They're like, no, It's still better than smoking, which I agree. Yes, I partially agree to you. It's probably better than smoking. But let's not forget why we do this. We transition to vaping to have a less harmful alternative. We want to avoid as much possible the risk of dying, through enjoying our nicotine delivery intake. So the more information and the more studies that we have, the better it's going to be overall. Not only for us, let's not be selfish, but for the millions of smokers that are out there, man. We have the potential with this product to help millions of lives. Why and where down the line did we forget that? And everybody kind of started doing their own thing is beyond me. But that's the state of the community now. Once you threaten, the sub-owners or cloud chasers, they take it really, really personally, and they attack the technology that's trying to help the overall scope of vaping. And the scope of vaping is tobacco harm reduction. We should never, never forget that.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, do you really need to vape at 80 watts? That's the question. There's various videos out there of guys showing, stacked batteries, mods so hot they have to hold them with a tea towel, that kind of thing. That's not what we want. We want some sensibility. Otherwise, we're never going to get the right information out to the right people.
You're never going to see me and Phil doing videos like that. I promise you that. That's one thing that we stuck true from the beginning, and me and Phil discussed about this a long time. I refuse to review 100-watt mods. I won't do them. I've turned them down. I refuse to do low builds on cam on my reviews. I just refuse to do that. Why am I saying that it's bad? No, it's just not. I don't believe in it. I don't believe that this is what tobacco harm reduction is. And trust me, I don't know how long you've been vaping for, Marco, but when I started vaping, even with the crappy products that were on the market then, we still were able to quit smoking, right?
Yeah.
So what has changed? If anything, this technology should help millions of smokers, but it doesn't, because there's not one perfect device out there for everybody.
No, there's certainly not one perfect device, and I think the problem that we face is that some of the people who are smoking are having a bad experience, the closed vaping, as you call it, and they're having a bad experience at that, and they're not moving on to open vapor. They're not moving on to the Gen 2, Gen 3s. I've been vaping now 3 years next month. So, yeah, since 2012.
And I'm sure it wasn't that easy when you started, but no. It worked for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped at 9:30 on the Friday night. I started vaping, and that was it. And I was using a Riva 901 tank system. And after 2 days, I bought a lava tube, and then the addiction continued. Right. Not the addiction to vaping, the addiction to devices. Yeah. We've got about 7 minutes left of the show. We've talked a bit about the China trip. We've talked a bit about the conference. Let's talk a bit more about the role you're having over in the States with the advocacy.
Yeah, I mean, I started reviewing products, and I was just kind of tossed into the advocacy field, not really by choice. I just felt that we were lacking, even with the Vape Team show that I did for a little over 3 years on VP Live. It was more of trying to get the information and the news out there, and a lot of people turned to me because my biggest addiction is being a news junkie. I follow everything, I monitor everything. I educate myself a lot on legislation issues and, of course, scientific research. So I took on a couple of roles that kind of propelled me, I guess, as an advocate here in the United States and globally, to be honest with you. I deal with a lot of issues in Greece and in other countries as well, trying to help the vapors out there. I think as a community, a whole, I think the biggest problem that we have now is the free market that we have has given this sense of freedom to all the vapors. We finally broke the addiction to tobacco cigarettes. We have availability of products. We have availability of e-liquids. There are no restrictions anywhere. And a lot of people have gotten really comfortable. People have been vaping for 3-4 years. A lot of people don't really care about advocacy, and I think that really has to change. If anything, my goal for 2015 is trying to get people more involved as pioneers. I consider all the vapors now, before the regulations hit in the EU and the US, I consider us pioneers. We've kind of created this entire community, mostly through YouTube and the internet, really, if you think about it. I consider them a family, and we should really take that responsibility on personally to keep this product alive and keep this product affordable and accessible to help the other smokers that are out there. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people to convert to vaping. And even today, after all these years, if I help somebody get off cigarettes, it gives me a tremendous amount of satisfaction. So the advocacy part it's a difficult task. I see it with my videos. I'll put up an advocacy video on my YouTube. I'll get a couple thousand views, and then I'll put the Kangaroo Sub Tank video on there. I get 8,000 views in 2 days. It just kind of gives you an idea of the percentage of the people that really care about the advocacy issues and what's going on politically around them. If there's anything that I can get through to your viewers in the EU and anybody's listening to the replay, is make no mistake about it, all this is about money, right? Everything that we face on a daily basis as vapors, and all the attacks that we're getting, and all the regulatory boards that are coming after us, it's one thing. It's not your health, it's definitely money. So we really have to find a way to get that across to society. And by society, I mean people that don't smoke and people that don't vape. That is one portion of the world that we have done a very poor job of getting across to, because we're always concentrating on fighting the negative that's coming from the regulatory boards, and we're also concentrated within the community of vapors of what we're doing. But we have done a poor job of reaching out to the people that don't smoke and don't vape and say, listen, this product saved my life. This is the difference between this product and what you know your entire life to be a cancer-causing product like cigarettes. Let me explain you what the difference is, and let me help me keep this product alive to save my life. And if we do that, I think we're going to see tremendous results.
Yeah, totally agree there. I think what we need to do as a community is globally come together. We need more synergy amongst ourselves, but globally. It's all well and good doing something in the States or doing something in the UK or in Europe, but what we need to do is have more of a coordinated attack, if you like, to make sure that the right information gets out there to the right people who are making the decisions. And a lot of the information they're getting from certain quarters is either inaccurate or just plain lies, and they're basing their decisions on that information.
Well, I mean, again, as an industry, and by industry, I'm talking about people that financially gain in this industry, not the vapors. The industry has done a poor job of fixing that. All right, there's a lot of money in, we don't have big tobacco money yet, but in the United States, I predict a $5 billion industry. Some of that money has to be spent on positive PR and using the same tactics that the ants are using against us. I brought this up on my show a few weeks ago, before the new year, and I said, what do we do to change the image of vaping? Well, we need to hire public relations firms just like the antis do. The American Lung Association, the American Cancer Association, all these associations, they have a hired PR firm. They pay him millions of dollars every year to get out there on TV and say that smoking is bad. All we have to do is we have to hire the same, not the same because they wouldn't work for us, but similar type of PR firms that are funded by the industry itself to get out there and say, hey, vaping is not bad. Smoking is bad, but vaping is not bad. It's a completely different thing. But once again, it's the chain of command that we talked about earlier, and I keep bringing this up because it's true. The people that stand to lose a lot of money financially here have to make the investment to change the image of vaping, which in turn is going to help us vapors as well too. It's going to help us in the eyes of society, and we see it with every other. See it with the vaping industry. It's a quick buck. Let's make it now for the next couple of years and let's get out of here instead of investing to something that potentially could overtake combustible tobacco in 10 years. And can you imagine if you are a manufacturer of e-liquid or a manufacturer of e-cigs or even a vendor? Can you imagine what your business is going to look like 10 years from now? I mean, you might be the next RJR, who knows? But nobody thinks that way. Really nobody thinks that far. It's like this short-term, short-sighted business plan. Let's do this for the next couple of years and not really invest into our future. Yes,
we could go on and on and on and on. However, we've hit our time tonight.
That went out pretty quick, actually.
Yeah, it always does. It always does, Demetrius. Let me just tell you that at the weekend, on Sunday, we have the postponed meetings that were going to be a couple of weeks ago, but due to the events that happened in Paris, things were moved to the 25th. We've got some confirmed meets at the moment. One in Birmingham, 11 a.m, the Mailbox, Royal Mail Street. There's one at Bristol at Cribbs Causeway Mall. There's one in Cardiff at ITV Wales, that's in Assembly Square. And there's also one at 12 p.m. in London at BMA House, Tavistock Square. So if you want to get along to one of those meets, for goodness sake, take your camera. And if you've got any footage you want to send on, you know what to do. You can get in contact with us on Facebook, Twitter, or via email. VaperScene@vaportrails.tv is one. And I'm sure that the links will be going up into chat if we have them. It just remains me to thank Demetrius for coming on. You're on screen.
Yeah, thanks. I'm honored to be here. I want to once again say that I am David Dorn's #1 fan. I want to make sure I get that in there. By the way, David, pay me $20 for every time that I raise that sign. And also, I want to say it's really time. You know, with Kevin on the VP Live Network for the last 4 years, we've always reached over the pond, try to build this bridge between the EU vapors and the US vapors, and I think it's critical, especially in the next couple of years with the huge fights that we have upcoming, for all of us globally to come together to fight for this product. Advocacy is not US, it's not UK. Advocacy is global, and it's extremely important that we put our differences aside, our egos aside, and all of us come together to fight for this product. Because, as you said earlier, there's only a very small portion of this community that advocates, and if we all come together, we can definitely have a really powerful movement.
Yeah, echo that big time, Demetrius, echo that big time. And hopefully we will get you back on again at some point in the non-too-distant future. So it's time to go. Yes, don't forget, tomorrow night it's Matt with the... excuse me. Tomorrow night it's Matt with the Cave. And on Thursday it's Dave Dawn, possibly with a pocket on Keith's shirt. On Sunday it's Dave's Tackle Box. And on Monday, of course, it's Strips and Tips. I'll be here next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Say goodbye, Demetrius.
Good night. Thanks for having me.
Good night, folks, and we'll see you next week. Tatty bye. Thanks for watching.
VaperScene is proudly Health e-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquid.